Hello and welcome to Unprofessional Engineering. My name is James.
And you got Luke.
Luke, today we're talking about something that's earth-shaking. Ground shaking?
Ground shake?
Earth-shattering?
Earth-shattering.
Earthquakes.
Earthquakes.
I cleverly named this Everything Earthquakes. How do you like that?
I would have cleverly named it Things That Never Happen in Pittsburgh.
That is not true.
I know. Are you
And I have
about
some
that?
information about that.
Okay, good.
Good.
Because I heard we had one once.
Is that right? Once?
I don't know.
What's an earthquake, Luke?
So an earthquake is the result of a sudden release of stored energy in the Earth's crust that creates seismic waves.
That's the noise earthquakes make,
I'm fairly certain. I've never been in one, but I imagine that's exactly what it sounds like.
Yeah, so you pretty much nailed it there. You did a great job on that definition.
Thank you.
And so, as we all know, or we will shortly, this is because we have tectonic plates slowly moving and scraping across and pushing into each other, right?
I guess. Yes.
Okay, well, thanks for that.
I'm trying to play along.
Oh, okay. So basically, the stress along these edges where they meet kind of grows too great at some point, and then all of a sudden, kapow!
It's kind of like your personality and my personality. And we're like, ugh, and all of a sudden, I win.
You always do win. That's right. But that's exactly what it's like. Our personalities conflicting until there's too much stress, and then you win.
Or they could be diverging.
Wow.
Tectonic plates not only say that 10 times real fast. Not only do tectonic plates smash together, but sometimes they're diverging. Diverging areas aren't bad areas unless you fall in the hole.
Well, that would be bad, wouldn't
like
it?
California, there's a little bit of a divergence there on a fault.
And then you fall in the hole and die?
Yeah, I guess.
Huh. All right. Well, let's talk about tectonic plates or plate tectonics a little bit more. Because if we don't understand that, we can't understand earthquakes at all. All right. So plate tectonics is a theory that the Earth's outer shell is divided into a whole bunch of plates. Really not all that many.
Do you know why it's a theory?
Why is it a theory, Luke?
Because the deepest hole that has ever been drilled has never gone down below just the very first portion of the Earth's crust. So it's a theory because it's never been observed. They're guessing this happens. Just there's all kinds of theories.
I used to try and dig holes to the other side of the Earth when I was little, especially in my sandbox. And I once got deep enough that I would be confident putting a body in it, but never deep enough to get to the other side of the Earth. So that's something. So I probably didn't make it either to the other side.
Okay.
Anyways, you're right. So we haven't gone deep enough to prove that this is more than a theory. But in theory, these plates are gliding over the mantle and the rocky interior layer above the core.
Which is molten.
Molten. So we're kind of floating on there, just floating around.
And supposedly, there's something to do with we're literally, if you imagine the inside is moving one direction and these plates are all moving different directions, that also has to do with something where how animals get from one continent to another. In some cases, they say plate tectonics is responsible because at one point in time, the way the globe looks right now isn't the way that it looked a bazillion years ago.
Yeah.
So Africa was next to New Jersey at one point, and
and Africa didn't want New Jersey either. So that was a pretty good one.
Bazinga. Is that how that goes?
That was Bazinga. Yes. So 2 fun facts about that since you're going there. So fun fact number 1, plate tectonics is the modern day version of continental drift, which we've probably all heard of before, and that's a theory proposed by Alfred Wegener in 1912. Did you like that pronunciation?
It was excellent.
Or as my wife would say, pronunciation, because she doesn't know how to pronounce words properly. Fun fact number 2, we determined, like you said, that the continents moved thanks to Alfred, who noticed that fossil remains of the same extinct animals or plants could be found across several continents that are now no longer adjacent to each other. So that's if you died half of your body could be found on one and half on the other, maybe.
What's up with that?
Right?
Wow, you're really morbid, burying bodies.
I don't know what happened.
Question for you: how many major tectonic plates are there?
I would say there's 9 major ones, and
Wow.
they'd be North American, Pacific, Eurasian, African, Indo-Australian, Australian, Indian, South American, and Antarctic.
That's off the top of your head.
I mean, off the top of my head, but there's also a number of minor
There's
ones
a whole bunch
as well,
of.
right?
It looks like there's close to 20 or 25
ones?
in the list that I saw. Like
Yeah.
there's like a little teeny tiny one, like right below the curve of Mexico. There's a whole bunch of them over in like East Asia area. So
The largest plate is the Pacific plate, actually, at almost 40 million square miles, which is roughly 1 trillion square kilometers.
Wow.
Is that right?
It's
It's 103 square
a couple
kilometers.
trillion.
Most of it's located under the ocean, though, and it's moving northwest at a speed of 2.75 inches per year, which is actually, I mean, a pretty good amount if you think about it.
Yeah.
Thanks for that. So you're not impressed by the speed that it's
I am
moving?
not impressed by the speed of that.
So to break it down in even simpler terms for you, Luke, because I know you're not that smart, right?
I'm not. I
Okay.
never claimed to be.
Well, that's fair. Plate tectonics is kind of like a pot boiling on a stove, or so the internet told me. The convection drives plate tectonics through a combination of like pushing and spreading apart of these mid-ocean ridges and pulling and sinking downwards into subduction zones. So this is like you said, like our personalities conflicting, and eventually one of them goes to the top and the other one pushes down. And that's when we get these horrible, nasty little earthquakes. Or large ones.
Did you know that the stress and strain and failure that happens during that process is called the elastic rebound theory?
One more time, tell me about the elastic rebound theory.
So the process of stress and strain and failure that's happening where all those, it's called the elastic rebound theory.
Huh.
Again, these are all theories, so is this truly science?
I think it is. I think theory is kind of like the core of science, right?
I guess. I remember hearing a ton about tectonic plates. Like I remember in like geography class, like in like 5th or 6th grade or whatever, it was all about tectonic plates and California was going to fall off the
I'm still
the edge
waiting
of the
for
country.
that. Any day. I can't wait.
I can't wait.
Yeah. I'm glad we're on the same page on that. I think there were less tectonic plates when I was learning this.
Yeah, they probably just discovered through their theories the smaller ones.
They're like, wait, an earthquake showed up here?
So one thing I can say about this, so I'm looking at this sweet map that I found on the intranet.
I think you drew it.
I did. And I'm just so happy that if basically if you live in Pittsburgh or if you live in Siberia or West Africa or Australia, you're good.
Yeah, we're kind of like smack dab in the middle of a plate,
Boom.
right?
Yeah.
And so we don't really get this.
A lot of activity.
Hey, Pittsburgh has a lot of bad things, but I always say natural
No
disasters
earthquakes.
is really a good one. Hurricanes, not really.
Nope.
Tornadoes, not so much. Earthquakes, nope. Haven't seen a volcano in a while.
I feel like Visit Pittsburgh may be our sponsor.
That's beautiful. I
Come
think
to
they
Pittsburgh.
should be.
There's no earthquakes.
That's the big
The
thing.
new tagline.
Oh,
Oh, goodness.
do you have any information on what the kids call the Ring of Fire?
I don't.
You really don't?
I don't.
Really?
Oh, no, I've heard of the Ring of Fire. You're right. I don't know about it, though. I skipped that one.
Really?
Sorry. Yeah.
Okay, so the Ring of Fire is kind of well known for being all sorts of volcanoes, right?
There's a whole bunch of them. They're all
There
like,
is.
way over there.
Okay, it's way over there. I'll cover this one then. The Pacific Ring of Fire is basically an earthquake belt that experiences, wait for it, 81% of the largest earthquakes in the world. So that's not cool.
No.
Also, Pittsburgh's not located there. So the belt extends from Chile north up the Pacific coast of South America, Central America to Mexico, and into North America, into, like California and whatnot. And then it also includes parts of Alaska. And then it goes over through the Pacific over to Japan, the Philippines, some of the other Southwest Pacific islands, and New Zealand, and they're all part of this earthquake belt. And the presence of these growing mountains, kind of like under the water and whatnot, and different volcanoes, deep ocean trenches, and all this tectonic plate movement causes the Pacific Ring of Fire to be highly prone to earthquakes as well as volcanic activity.
When you look at the map, I mean, it looks like so the map shows these convergent plate boundaries with little kind of mountain arrow thingies, and that whole area is there's just a ton of stuff just going like that.
Yeah. And I mean, we've all heard of the Ring of Fire. You know, we hear the song. Is it Johnny Cash, right? Have you seen Walk the Line? Jimbo, at it.
No, I saw the one that John C. Reilly did, the funny Walk the Line version.
I don't know Funny Walk the Line, but it sounds like a hit. Anyways, before we move on, let's take a break for a word from our sponsor.
Visit Pittsburgh.
Visit Pittsburgh.com. Let's go get that website now. All right, so we don't have a sponsor, as per the usual, but what we do have is a couple of shout-outs. Shout-out number 1, Charlie W.
Good old Sea-Dog.
He promised us some show ideas and then never sent them.
Oh.
And then I emailed him and was like, hey, since you said you wanted stickers, you know, let me have your address and feel free to send over some of those show ideas. And he's like, all right, I'll try and get you some. I have a whole bunch of them. Send. And I was like, well, if you have a bunch of them, why didn't you just send them to us?
I'm gonna give Charlie, you're the worst.
He's the worst. Our next shout out, and this is a good one. This is my buddy Jimbo. For any of you who listen to us, I talk about Jimbo on here pretty regularly, and you also might notice that Luke and I, especially Luke, make some interesting movie references.
Yes.
And Jimbo has gone through all 100 and whatever episodes that we have, and it's continuing to grow, and has listed out all of the movies that Unprofessional Engineering has referenced, what episodes they're in, and those that appear in multiple.
Oh my goodness.
So if you go to unprofessionalengineering.com, you can check out this list. It's through a certain program. You don't have to sign up for it to see it. But then you can also take the test where you can find out how many of the movies that we've mentioned have you seen. I'm at like 81%.
Is he on the payroll?
He should be.
Okay.
He makes as much as we do.
Oh, okay. So he's making the money.
That's right. Big bank. So anyways, in addition to that, thanks, Jimbo.
Yeah, that's awesome.
How about you guys write us a review on iTunes and click the subscribe button. That's right. If you have any show ideas or want to see some sweet stickers coming your way, email us at unprofessionalengineering@gmail.com.
Let's get back to it.
That was really good, Luke.
I've been wanting to do better transitions for our stuff. That felt good.
That really nailed it. So do you want to talk about anything else? Tectonic plates.
So, not specifically tectonic plates. So no, I don't.
How about the Richter scale?
Ooh, I'm excited about the Richter scale.
Okay, let's hear it.
So the Richter scale quantitatively measures an earthquake's magnitude or the size of the earthquake. And this was devised back in 1935 by an American seismologist, Charles F. Richter. And
Alan Richterman? I thought it was Alan Richterman.
No.
No? Harry Potter fame?
No.
Love Actually? No? Okay.
All right. And some guy named Bino Gutenberg. My guess is he's probably the uncle of Steve Gutenberg. Just a guess.
I thought he
famous
invented Bino.
He could have. Interesting fun fact about the Richter scale, though.
Ooh, I want to hear it.
The Richter scale doesn't really get used anymore. So they use the word Richter scale, but the problem with the Richter scale, there were some inherent problems with the Richter scale when it was devised and invented. So what they do now is they use other scales. So the one that's typically used by legitimate seismologists like ourselves is something called the moment magnitude scale.
Way worse name.
Yeah. And we use that one as seismologists, but what we do is we then take
what we do as
seismologists is we take those results and then we relate them mathematically to what it would be in the Richter scale. Because so like every time you see like Al Roker talking about there was an earthquake in the Ring of Fire that was a 7.2 on the Richter scale, it's like it wasn't measured with a Richter scale, it was measured with something else, and they convert it to the Richter scale because it just sounds way cooler than moment magnitude scale.
I know a lot about making up numbers and then multiplying them by numbers to come up with things.
Oh, my goodness. Total burn right there. So Mr. Richter, good old Charlie, he was born April 26, 1900 on the dot in Hamilton, Ohio, just across the border from us.
And then he invented this in 35? So he was a 35-year-old that invented this?
So once again, so here's the thing. We always think that people like way back in the day were like much more successful, and on the surface it is. But these people died at like 50.
Yeah, I'm way better at living than them.
So like if we're living more, you have much more time to
So I'm a bigger failure because I don't accomplish anything in a longer period of time?
So he died at the age of 85, so September 30th, 85 in California. And basically all of his research and all of his development was basically for, loosely stated, in California. So basically the Richter scale was set up to work and operate for California specifically, and that's where some of the inherent problems kind of came in.
So the Richter scale is up to 10. And I saw that one of these big problems is when you get to the like 9, 10, maybe even 8 range, it's really not very accurate, which is kind of interesting since it was the only thing it was supposed to do. Mm-hmm. So I guess I could invent a bad way to measure earthquakes as well. One more thing about this before we get into another bad way of measuring earthquakes would be that the Richter scale is a base 10 logarithmic scale for all of our math friends out there.
A base 10, base 12, somewhere in there.
Meaning that each order of magnitude is 10 times more intense than the last one. So a 2 is 10 times worse than a 1, and a 3 is 100 times worse than that. So they get pretty powerful then, the higher you get. So another terrible way to measure earthquakes would be the modified Mercalli intensity scale. Did you look into this one?
I did not.
I did nail the way I said that, huh?
You did.
I'm so good at pronunciating. I'm glad my wife doesn't listen to this. All right. The effect of an earthquake on the Earth's surface is called the intensity. So the intensity scale consists of a series of certain key responses, such as people being awoken, for like waking up out of their sleep because of the shaking, or movement of furniture, or damage to buildings or structures.
Are you kidding me?
This is what this scale does.
This is a legitimate scale?
It literally has different rankings of how jacked up your stuff is going to get. And that's how they measure it. Isn't that just absurd?
I think you and I should do one, and it would be like how loud people scream and how much people run. Because in all like those ATM videos you see and like, closed circuit televisions that are like in public whenever earthquakes happen, all you see is people running like crazy and screaming. I think we should invent a scale that measures those two things, running and screaming.
I'm in. So my favorite line of all of this, it does not have a mathematical basis. Instead, it is just an arbitrary ranking based on observed effects. How ridiculous is that?
So,
plus, what happens then when we start earthquake-proofing our buildings? Now they don't fall as easy? Does that mean that earthquake wasn't as bad as the one in the past?
It's interesting that they went the non-scientific route, whatever word
one way or the other.
Because before the Richter scale, it was all just like anecdotal. It was all like, it kind of shook a little bit and some stuff. So it was kind of what they did before the Richter scale. It was like, oh, that was a bad one because, my stuff fell off of the shelf. And, oh, this one wasn't that bad because stuff didn't fall. It's like, really?
Yeah, that's interesting. So a little bit of understanding the Richter scale and what the numbers mean. Like, so you can put it closer to what was the other one called? The Mercalli intensity scale. So a 0 to a 1.9 can be detected only by seismographs, okay?
I have a very astute sense of seismology, so I might be able to.
2 to 2.9, hanging objects may swing. And I don't know if you remember a few years back, maybe 10 at this point, Pittsburgh had either not an earthquake, but it got some of the aftershocks or whatever. And I remember being in the office and the blinds shaking and just kind of having like a weird feeling like in my stomach, and everybody just kind of like popping their heads up out of the cubes looking around like, that's weird, and later finding out what it was. I just assume that's life in California all the time.
Oh, yeah.
3 to 3.9, comparable to the vibrations of a passing truck. 4 to 4.9 may break windows or small objects. 5 to 5.9, Furniture moves, chunks of plaster fall, knock you on the head. That's no good. 6 to 6.9. Now, I see these ones are in red, so that must be worse.
Red's bad.
Damage to well-built structures, 7 to 7.9. Buildings displaced from foundations. Yikes. Cracks in the earth, pipes broken. 8 to 8.9. Bridges destroyed, few structures left standing. Sounds terrible. And 9 and over is near total destruction.
Everybody's dead.
And the cool thing, not so cool, but kind of, you can see the waves moving through the earth, visible like with the naked eye,
like in the
which
movies.
Would be cool. Yeah.
That would be kind of neat.
Yeah.
So interesting thing about, fun fact, I'll say. It's estimated that only 10% or less of the Earth, since you're talking about energy, only 10% or less is actually radiated via seismic energy. Most of an earthquake energy, for an earthquake that fractures, it's converted to heat.
Ooh, interesting.
So imagine if you got 100% of a real earthquake, the Earth would basically explode.
That would just explode. You're
basically.
Right. Small earthquakes, like a 1, happen every minute on Earth. Moderate, like 5s, every 10 years. 9s, every 300. 10s, maybe every 1,000 years or so. Also, understanding them in the size of, let's say, dynamite would be... A 5 would be 20 million kilograms of dynamite.
It's about 4 pounds.
About 4 pounds of dynamite, yeah. So that's kind of interesting.
Now,
before we move on any further with all of this great conversation, let's take a break for this week's Luke's Rant.
Okay, so I'm going to stick with earthquakes, right?
Right.
You know, we have lots of friends that live in California, and they're dealing with all this craziness. We can send a spaceship to Mars twice.
I mean, not technically a spaceship.
Whatever it is, drill a hole in Mars, get feedback, and know if there was like water and animals on Mars, right? But we cannot predict an earthquake. I just don't get so all of the things that we've talked about with these scales and measurements, that's like when people are dying and stuff is shaking. It's like, oh, it's bad. Like, yeah, no kidding, dummy. So
that wasn't nice. My mom would tell you that's not a nice word.
I'm sorry. But my issue is, I can't believe that there hasn't been more with actually being able to predict. Now, I know that they can kind of predict the aftershocks, and there's this theory that earthquakes kind of happen the way storms happen, where like an earthquake happens and then they kind of keep happening because they all keep disrupting each other.
Oh.
But the fact that like you can't just know that an earthquake is going to happen in like 2 weeks and give some people some notice. That's amazing to me, considering the technology that we have. And it all comes down, James, to we've never...
Is that dig a hole deep enough?
That's the dig a hole
the
deep
60
enough
miles
sound.
Into the crust?
I forget what the number is you need to go to get to...
I think it's 60 miles.
Like below these tectonic plates. But I just can't believe that we haven't drilled that far.
What's going to happen when somebody's drilling that hole eventually? They hit the 60-mile mark and they're like, uh-oh, still going. Throw all of this away.
And then that's why it's a theory, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
right.
It's not observable. So, or they drill that hole and then like all kinds of crazy stuff comes out.
Yeah, monsters.
You know what we need? We need Ben Affleck and Bruce Willis to dig that hole.
Was Ben Affleck in that?
Yeah, he was. Armageddon, baby.
And Aerosmith's daughter?
Liv Tyler.
Liv Tyler.
We're doing so many movie references. Sorry.
Well, that was some sort of rant.
No, I just can't believe that the science isn't there.
Yeah. Did you see that, speaking of science and spaceships, Japan just landed a lander on an asteroid?
I did.
And that it was a year late because when it got there, it was just over the surface, and they were like, oh, no, this is gravelly, not sandy. Apparently, that was enough to make them not land.
And they knew that ahead of time.
And they knew that.
But we can't predict an earthquake.
Amazing.
Yes.
All right, moving on. What do you have to talk about next? Anything useful?
So I have like 3 kind of fun facts, and then I'm done. So whatever you got.
I wanted to talk about the top 10 states for seismic activity.
Ooh, is this a test?
Oh, you just read it, too.
I just got the first one.
Yeah, well, that's the big part. That's
Go
like
ahead.
the big shock to me.
Ask.
Well, give me your top
Pennsylvania.
10. Okay, no.
Okay, see, I played along.
Thanks. Give me your top 10.
My top 10 would be Alaska in the United States.
Yeah.
I'd say Alaska, California, Arizona, Portland. I know that's not a state. Florida and Dallas.
Okay, that was good. Alaska was number 1, which I thought was a big shock. Which I know
that one doesn't surprise me because I think I knew about that Alaska was pretty active.
Oh, well, it's number 1, followed by California.
I was kind of there.
Nevada coming number 3. Hawaii.
Oh, how did I forget Hawaii?
Hawaii's right there. Ring of Fire style, right?
Mm-hmm.
Wyoming, Idaho, Montana, Utah. So everyone on that coasty area, and then Portland.
I did get Portland,
yeah,
even though it's not a state.
And Oregon, yes. Fun fact for you, though.
Shoot.
Earthquakes do also happen on the East Coast, and unlike their western counterparts, their effects are felt much further away. Plus, because of our old buildings over here versus on the West Coast, a lot of the times they can be a lot more detrimental? No, a lot worse.
Yes.
A lot more damage.
A lot more damageable.
More damaging.
More damageness. Yes.
Another fun fact.
Don't steal one of my fun facts.
Oh, are you gonna say this one? Go ahead. Let's
talk about it. So I got
three,
and I'll do a little lightning round on here.
Okay.
So fun fact: the largest earthquake ever recorded was back in 1960, which is relatively recent, and this was the Vidalia earthquake, and it was
Nailed
a 9.6. I thought it was like Vidalia, like the onion.
Oh, I love Vidalias.
Dude, they're so good.
Yeah.
But it was a 9.6 on the Richter scale. We know that scale's not really that good. Next fun fact, the largest earthquake in the United States was back in 1964. This was in Alaska.
Yeah, that
and
surprised me.
And it was a 9.2. That doesn't surprise me. I knew that. It's kind of
what was it? Where was it at? You don't have it. You don't have the name?
No, I don't. I don't have
How
the
big
name.
was the San Francisco one? Like an 8.9 or something? Do you remember that? You were old enough to remember.
Vaguely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then last one, the deadliest earthquake.
Ooh,
and
I like this. I have a hole.
When I did my cut and paste, I didn't copy all the numbers, so I'm not sure what I did there. But this was the Shanyex earthquake. So this was in that Ring of Fire.
I think it's Shanxi.
Shanxi, and I have 1556 was the year, and I thought I wrote down the number. I'm gonna say the number that I think I remember seeing was like 500,000 people died in the earthquake.
That many?
So
that sounds made up to me.
So the year was 1556, and 500,000 people died. I'm pretty sure it's around 500,000.
Interesting.
That's all I got.
So I had a little more information on the Great Chilean earthquake that
or
you
the Vidalia onion.
The Vidalia onion earthquake. So like you said, it was like around a 9.6, give or take, whatever that might mean, on the old Richter scale. And the tremor caused localized tsunamis, which is a big effect from a lot of earthquakes.
Tsunami is a big wave, in case you don't know what that is.
It's a big wave, like when you're at the baseball stadium and everyone like stands up and does
a
that.
Tsunami.
That's like a localized tsunami. And it severely battered the Chilean coast with waves up to 25 meters high, which
like 4
is
feet.
82 feet.
Oh, 82 feet.
Yeah, that's pretty tall. That's like taller than me.
That's like that movie. There was a movie where that happened. Oh, wow.
Have you ever seen the actual like footage of people recording tsunamis?
It's like,
and it's like,
idiot?
how dumb are you?
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
The main tsunami raced across the Pacific Ocean and smacked Hawaii, which is no good. Waves as high as 35 feet were recorded 6,200 miles away from the epicenter. How crazy is that?
That's bananas.
Imagine those ships on the ocean just... bet they're at the bottom now.
Yeah.
For us to go treasure hunt.
Mm-hmm.
That's not good. A few more fun facts for you. You ready?
Shoot.
I thought this was interesting. And this is kind of like, here's the answer to a question I never knew I had.
Ooh.
Okay? Earthquakes do occur in Antarctica.
Which one's Antarctica? Top one or bottom one?
I think that's the bottom one. You have a little map up there.
Okay.
So, another fun fact, there are only 19 operating seismograph stations in all of the continent of Antarctica. So smaller earthquakes are less likely to get picked up, but they do happen. And it also has something called ice quakes, which like earthquakes, except they're between the sheets of ice.
So our flat earthers, they better watch that wall if there's an ice quake on the ice wall.
I wonder if they believe in, like, how they explain earthquakes.
Yeah, how would they explain earthquakes?
Maybe they have the same things. Maybe it's like the wall pushing against it. I don't know.
Keeping the White Walkers out.
100,000 earthquakes are registered around the world each year.
How many?
100,000.
But these include, like, the little teeny tiny
Yeah, little ones.
Okay.
Yeah. Worldwide, there are about 1,500 earthquakes of magnitude 5 or higher every year. The largest earthquakes in history have been about a 9 to a 9.5, guessing. Major earthquakes release far more energy, this is a good one, than any man-made explosion. In 1906, the 1906 San Francisco earthquake was a magnitude of 8.3 and was approximately 1 million times as powerful as the atomic bomb dropped on Hiroshima. Can you imagine that?
Yeah, but there wasn't any radioactive fallout that killed people and all that sort of stuff, so it's a little different.
Wow.
I mean, I get the power, but...
Couple questions for you.
Shoot.
Which country do we typically locate the most earthquakes in?
I think I read this. This was China.
Correct, except we call it Japan. The whole country is a very active seismic area. Which country actually has the most earthquakes?
China.
Indonesia is a very seismic zone.
I'm so bad with geography.
But by virtue of the larger size compared to Japan, it has more total earthquakes.
The minute you go past, like, Germany, I'm
I'm pretty much done after Ohio. And so I'm like, Ohio, something, California.
Okay.
Yeah. And then last but not least, which country has the most catastrophic earthquakes, or which has had the most damage and fatalities? Portland is close. It is third, I think. But it is China, finally, you could have said that, and Iran, which are both on very active areas, and they have long historical records of catastrophic earthquakes. And Turkey is also up there in the runnings.
Okay.
Yeah.
This was better than I thought, James.
It was better than you thought? I'm glad that you enjoyed it. I liked it as well. I've learned a lot, actually. I think I know more about earthquakes. Maybe we should have done something about what do you do if there's an earthquake.
Scream and run.
All right. I think that's the last piece of information we need to give people. So until next time.
See ya.